Just because something makes the Amazon bestsellers list doesn't mean it isn't a scam. And that's the exact thing we have going on here with this PC. As you can see here, we're looking at a bunch of different PC desktops ranging from both, your typical office style computer to gaming computers. And there's definitely some good ones that make this list, specifically the number one, gaming focused PC here, which is the CyberPower PC. This is an actual PC worth buying. As you can see, I purchased a variation of the CyberPower PC back in the day when I bought the RTX 2060 and i5 11400F combination PC from CyberPower. It's a great computer, and this one with an i5 11600KF and a RTX 3060 with a 1 terabyte hard drive and a 500 gig SSD and a 16 gig of DDR4 memory kit. It's hard to beat a $1,200 PC, which makes sense as to why it's on the bestsellers list and why it comes in at number 6. But then you get PCs like this one, the one I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that just don't make sense even at $500. So this is definitely a PC that a lot of people are coming onto Amazon and seeing, wow, I can get a gaming desktop for $500. I can get this for my kid, or I'm getting it for myself. And it's got an i5, it's got 8 gigs of RAM, it's got a terabyte hard drive, and it's got a GTX 650 with 1 gigabyte of VRAM. So sure, it's a $500 PC, and you can't really expect too much at that budget when you're looking at a gaming desktop. And it definitely looks the part, this PC. You got a lot of the RGB gaming fans. You got like an overall pretty clean aesthetic, one that's not going to get a lot of airflow with all this glass paneling on the front of this case. But when you look at something like this at $500 and all you're getting is a GTX 650 and an i5, which if we look down below at the actual specs of this thing, is an i5 2400, so like a 10-year-old CPU, this thing makes absolutely no sense at $500. If you wanted to buy the components for this thing and just build it yourself, it shouldn't cost you over like $200, and you're probably going to end up getting better components than what you have here. I've made plenty of videos on this channel going and taking a PC like one of these computers that you can buy, whether it be an HP EliteDesk 800 G1, which has an i5 4590, so already a 2-year newer CPU than the i5 2400 and that Alarco gaming PC, or even, something like this HP 8300 Elite small form factor with an i5 3470. A 3rd or 4th gen versus a 2nd gen Intel Core CPU is gonna be a much better deal. And with this 4590 for $190, you get 16 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte hard drive. So you're getting better components for $188 than that $500 gaming PC, and all you're missing out on is a GPU. You can find a $300 or less GPU that's gonna be better than a GTX 650, and all it takes is popping in a graphics card into an existing case. Now, you are limited with some of these, desktop PCs, like these office PCs that are small form factor, meaning that you can only fit a low profile graphics card. But even with a low profile graphics card like a GTX 1650, 1050, or even a 1030, you're gonna get better gaming performance than that GTX 650. And let's just put that to the test real quick and try to find ourselves a cheap low profile graphics card. So if we look for a low profile GPU, you can get yourself a GT 730 for $80, still way better than a GTX 650. You can get yourself a GTX 1050 Ti for $250, still under the $310 that we have to spend on a graphics card. But I recently did a video building a computer inside of an HP 800 G1 with a GTX 1030 or GT 1030, 2 gigs of VRAM, still better than your 1 gig. It doesn't leave a whole lot of options when it comes to modern games that typically require closer to 4 gigs of VRAM to really get like medium to low settings at 1080p. But it's still going to perform way, way, way better than that GTX 650 and a $500 gaming desktop. And if you have the opportunity to buy a low profile card like this GTX 1650. So this is $330 and maybe brings us a little bit over the $500 that we were trying to meet with that other gaming desktop, but this would be so much better performing than that PC, it wouldn't even come close. If we were to compare some of these types of graphics cards, like a GT 1030 for $104 down here, or even a GTX 1650 that's slightly overpriced in this particular version at $330, compared to a GT 1030, it's 70% better than a GTX 650. If we look at a GTX 1650, these benchmarks are showing it being 4 times better than a GTX 650. So you're going to expect way higher frame rates, like looking here, 9 FPS in some of these benchmarks compared to 60 FPS, which goes from completely unplayable to playable in every single scenario. So for the most part, sure, it's a little bit more money going from the 1650 compared to, you know, the gaming desktop, and you do have to put a little bit of work in of actually installing the graphics card into one of those small form factor PCs, but you're going to get way better performance than what you're ever going to get out of this Alarco gaming PC with this i5 2400 and GTX 650. And some of you might be thinking, I don't want a gaming desktop that looks like an office PC. I want something that actually looks like a gaming PC. Well, that's not a problem either, because you can transplant all of the hardware that's inside of one of these cases into something like I did with the Cooler Master case. And now you have a completely, you know, gaming aesthetic with one of those cases and all of the hardware out of one of these office PCs. And that also opens the door up to getting full-size graphics cards, which means that you're not spending that extra bit of money on a low profile card that you would need for one of these cases. So there's a bunch of different options out there that are super, super easy. The easiest part of building a PC is installing the graphics card. You just slot it in to one of the PCIe slots. So if you're concerned about, you know, having to build a PC to get to a $500 budget, you're really not having to do that much building to actually install a graphics card into one of these existing refurbished or even just used PCs. So again, if you're looking for a budget desktop for gaming, stay away from this $500 Alarco PC, even though it is the 11th best-selling gaming desktop tower on Amazon. I just wouldn't really touch it if you're looking for something at that budget and you know, you don't want to actually build your own PC, but you just want to, you know, maybe throw in a graphics card. Go with something like this HP EliteDesk 800 G1 and go with a low profile graphics card to meet the needs of this case. And then if you wanted to do a little bit of an upgrade down the line and get a new case for this PC, you can always do that as well. And I'll link a video of mine down in the description below to actually explain how to go through and do that process. So overall, just don't always believe the Amazon bestsellers list. Some of them are awesome builds, like the CyberPower PC that I mentioned, but some of them, then again, are not, and you shouldn't fall for it being on the bestsellers list. So if you have any questions or comments about what I talked about in this video, be sure to leave those down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, turn on post notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one.